we've moved that many people into a home and changed that many lives in the way that I know homeownership. And so when I came back to the U.S. After that extended travel, I got involved with a company that was working with clean tech startups. I felt like energy and environment was very important to me at that time.
Others who in similar situations in different phases of their life are feeling like they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and they're facing their first wall right now. And Hello, and welcome back to the Masters of Real Estate. This is Nick Shah. I'm very excited about who we are going to learn from today. Hi, Skye. How's it going?
Hey, Nick. Things are going really well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. Really good to have you. Seems like you're also joining us from the Bay Area.
I am. Yeah. Beautiful Marin County.
Oh, yeah. Same as me. Yeah. So it's about time we hang out pretty soon. But Skye Laudari is become a good friend of mine. But, Skye, before I talk about all the amazing things you've done, I'd love to hear the story from the horse's mouth. So how do you introduce yourself these days?
Probably after husband and father. I would say that I'm the founder and CEO of Crib Equity, which is a shared equity marketplace for home buyers who are seeking access to more affordability in the housing market, or even more flexibility in the way that they purchase a home. And on the other side, we allow for investors to participate in the residential real estate market in a way that supports homeowners, and rather than competing with them in the market.
Wow. So it seems like you're building a platform that is solving the affordability crisis that is so visibly felt for so many families nationally, while building a platform for investors to co-invest with them. We're going to get into that, Skye. Before that, people really want to understand how you are like. So what spirit animal or bird do you feel best describes you, your approach, and your operating philosophy in life?
Yeah, this is it's a sort of a fun question, and I maybe have some an answer for you that is not obvious, or maybe you haven't heard before. So there's really two that I've been thinking about, and it's always fun to come on and say you're an eagle or a panther or something sort of intimidating and with strong prowess in the ecosystem. I think I don't know if you remember the Ted Lasso show, and he talks about being a goldfish, right? I think a goldfish is a very good animal to aspire to as an entrepreneur, to have that short memory. Each day you've got to get up and get back to work, regardless of what the last day brought for you, right? You can have some really high highs and some really low lows, especially in the earliest stages. And you have to be able to proceed onward each day, and find the ability to have that short-term memory. And then sometimes I think for Crib Equity and for our team, that bees are actually a really great analogy for us. And it's, again, not the sexiest animal to be a bee, but they exhibit a ton of cooperation. They're incredibly hardworking, and the result of that hard work also creates value for a greater good. So the world sort of benefits from their colony, that the surrounding ecosystem does. And so I think that as much as the data points to homeownership benefiting individuals and families and communities, we're also creating a solution that has tangible value for us, our customers, and our stakeholders.
Amazing. What an answer. Seems like it's a combination of, working really hard to cooperate with others in an effort to create value for the greater good, while having a really short-term memory of what didn't work. So you're constantly dusting yourself off and focusing on what's next.
Yeah. I was going to go with honey badger too, right? And you remember the honey badger doesn't care; it just goes. But I think that I like goldfish.
I love it. That's a really good, that we haven't heard that perspective before, and it's very refreshing to hear that. So if you had to now, clear that perspective with some numbers and try to just summarize your professional journey so far to your listeners, probably even with a metric that, helps you tie a bow around this, what metric would you say summarizes your career so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a little while to find your way, just like anything. So, some of my, my first working experiences, maybe indirectly or even unknowingly, sort of were attributed to the same thing. You're sort of finding the story, finding your narrative. But for me, it really connects back to being able to work on meaningful problems and meaningful solutions, to feel invested in the work that I'm doing and the outcomes that I'm creating. So, I think that would, at the best level or high level metrics, probably distill down to the impact that you're making, the number of people's lives that you're impacting, and hopefully in a positive way. But doing that on a scale where actually you're touching the way that people either experience the world or the way that they live in the world. And I think there's probably nothing of more meaning for me than to be able to do that.
I absolutely love it. Seems like you measure yourself by the number of lives you're positively impacted. That's very endearing to hear. What scale would you say you are at now, and what scale would you say you want to get to with what you're working on these days?
Yeah, I mean, in prior work experiences, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, of interactions and touch points with different consumers. I think more recently moving into real estate and prop tech, the sheer number of people decreases, but the meaningfulness of any of those interactions also increases, right? Trying to help someone buy or sell a home, being in, working in title and escrow, working on the brokerage side, now working with Crib Equity. You're really working with folks that have a real vested interest in the transaction that they're entering or exiting, and the way in which that's going to be a pivotal moment for their life. And so I think the meaning there is much greater. The transaction volume is arguably is lower. People buy fewer houses than they do Amazon subscription orders. So it's just a different logarithmic scale. But I'd love to see us move on from the first 1,000 homeowners to 100,000 homeowners. I think something like that would is a number that we throw out, that I throw out. I keep my mind of how meaningful that would be to consider that we've moved that many people into a home and changed that many lives in the way that I know homeownership has changed my own family's life. And so that feels really compelling.
That sounds incredible. Yeah, seems like you've already helped tens of thousands of lives, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives, but now you're planning to make a much deeper impact, probably solve the biggest problem they're facing in terms of housing affordability. And seems like your goal there is also to scale up dramatically in the number of lives you're positively impacting. Now let's go back to a phase in your life where you weren't an amazing bee and an amazing goldfish that had impacted so many lives positively, and where you were at zero. What would you say has been your broad trajectory so far?
Just in terms of my career and the path I've taken, yeah, I mean, a lot of it, started really focused on more entrepreneurial endeavors. And, as I said, even without necessarily being able to name it, looking for ways to impact. There was a very pivotal moment in my life after college. And it was actually in my final year of college when I realized that there was another path that I could take. So, I was always a very strong student, and, going to college was the step, and then the graduate school would be the next logical step after that. And that would lead to, the family and the house and the white picket fence and the happiness. And I saw a college roommate of mine. I saw his older brother traveling internationally, backpacking around the globe, and I thought, wait a minute, that's not necessarily a mentor, but someone who had just shown a light for me on an option that I didn't know existed. And so I ultimately felt compelled to do the same, and that ended up being what I thought was going to be a 6-month sabbatical before law school. Ended up being a 2-year journey around the world, and I think what that really taught me was, experience with different cultures, geographies, languages, and is really profoundly powerful, and laid the foundation for, I think, my path into entrepreneurship. So learning how to better communicate, how to improvise, how to navigate uncertainty. There's this and a deep desire to kind of walk my own, along with the confidence of knowing that I was actually capable of making it work. And so when I came back to the U.S. After that extended travel, I got involved with the company that was working with clean tech startups. I felt like energy and environment was very important to me at that time after seeing how the rest of the world used energy and resources compared to us here in the United States. That led to being a founding team member at a startup because I was consulting with them. I thought, I need to be part of this. And so it was just a progression from there of then, moving from some early success with that company into founding my own that was more mission-based. Again, trying to move from that compelling vision of being an entrepreneur, creating something, that creationary energy, to actually putting that behind something I believed in. I think that's been the trajectory since there. So I actually got into prop tech because of trying to solve my own problems and problems that I experienced in real estate. And so that's where I find myself today.
Wow. Yeah, that's a phenomenal journey, and I want to, get more into it and, learn more. So seems like after college you got very inspired and traveled the world by yourself for a couple of years. Obviously, that's going to be very inspiring for a lot of our younger listeners out there. And that just changed your perspective. You were able to see how different cultures and philosophies and religions and peoples behave, and came back and, started focusing on clean tech because you were deeply inspired by, improving how we use energy and deal with our environment. How did that transform into you suddenly becoming a founding member at a startup? Like, what was the inflection point that made you transition into entrepreneurship so early in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I loved the work that I was doing consulting with startups, and they were largely Series A or B companies, and I was working directly with the executives teams or the founding teams, and what I loved about it was being able to sort of drop in and out of a bunch of different companies and consult with them. The challenge that I faced was that I felt adjacent to or ancillary to the actual business because I wasn't there and I wasn't part of the actual energy and creative force inside of them. So that's where I went looking for the opportunity to actually join a company. And I think that is the most rewarding aspect of that I've had in my personal or professional career, has been having a nothing, right? Having an idea, having a concept, and then building that to a place where you realize you have a something, and you're sort of giving birth to an idea, to making it into a tangible thing. And so that's what I wanted to experience by joining a team and being internal to that process of the startup. So that's a lot of what compels me. That's the drive, is to create the thing, to realize that the value has been created out of your effort.
Wow. And it seems like that whole 0 to 1 experience that you got very early on was very foundational. In what ways did it help you when you launched your own mission-driven company down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways when you've been through it, you obviously have some understanding of what that path looks like, even though I think each path is very different. It helps you understand the stages that you're going through. It helps you keep the faith a little bit at times, and it helps you understand the goal and what success looks like and feels like for that next milestone, for the next goals that you've set for yourself. And so I'd say that's been certainly helpful for me. Kind of keeps me on track, keeps me focused on what really matters for us, and also incentivizes me in the right way to really feel like I'm striving for something that I know exists, and I know I know that what that feeling is. And I'm also a runner. I've done a number of marathons, and there's this aspect of running marathons where you're always excited for the race. You get going. Somewhere around mile 20 or 22, you're kind of starting to feel the pain, and you're thinking, why am I doing this? Why? Well, I'm such an idiot for putting myself through this pain and suffering. And that feeling largely carries on to the finish line most of the time. And then as soon as you cross the line, instant you cross the line, one of the first thoughts is, when do I get to do this again? And so I think there's some element of that that's also a psychological driver of creating something in work life as well. You want that challenge, you want the obstacles, you want to be able to create something, you want to be able to complete something, and that journey is one that I wanted to go on again.
That's incredible. That's such a powerful analogy, Sky, because what you're basically describing is the wall that a lot of people feel around the mile 20, 21, 22 mark, where it feels like there's an existential crisis and there's literally a wall in front of you. But you constantly find a way to push through that pain, embrace the discomfort. And once you cross the finish line, you get these insane feelings of exhilaration. What advice do you have for others who, in similar situations in different phases of their life, are feeling like they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel and they're facing their first wall right now and they haven't gone through the process like you had several times?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to ask yourself a number of questions. If is the wall actually creating? Is it an existential threat? Is there a real physical threat to you? Is there, what is that? What does that wall represent? So you certainly don't want to tell people to keep pushing if pushing is actually going to be damaging to them. But I think one of the things that I keep in mind is there's sort of this spectrum of choice that we have, and when you are doing something that feels like you need to do it, right? I have an obligation to do this thing because I always do this thing, or people are relying on me on to do this thing. That's a very challenging place. A lot of people. I find it as a helpful reminder to be framed a lot of those situations and a lot of context on the fact that I'm aware of that I'm doing. I'm choosing to do this, and then I choose to do it like with the agency or the challenges that I'm facing, and no one being close. So in some ways, taking back control, human over the control, making myself understand that this is a choice. I'm going to be there and to be working on this and doing this. And I think that provides a lot of sense of strength and security and motivation, right? Frankly, to keep going. So I think part of it is in how you frame it for yourself, and what that context is. But obviously, you also sometimes have to know when to stop too, right? If you're the runner and you are physically going to hurt yourself or damage your body, you may want to stop the race, right? So, there is some determination there.
So, Skies, that is such a powerful analogy for running marathons, because you obviously, a lot of marathon runners face this, what they call the wall or a pain at mile 20, 21, 22, and you found a way to push through it repetitively and finish the marathon, feel that exhilarating feeling and run again. But for somebody facing their wall for the first time in their life, or feeling like they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel right now, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nick. And I think first and foremost, if we take it to the analogy of running, you have to consider whether or not you're putting yourself at risk. Are you actually in physical danger? As that analogy might be, have you actually physically hurt yourself, and will continuing to go cause you more pain and more injury? Hopefully that's not the case. I think a lot of things, hopefully the people are facing challenges in their lives. If they are relationship driven or work driven, they're not an existential risk to our well-being. And in that case, I think one of the things that I often do is just try to look at the situation that I'm in and the choices that I've made, and give agency back to myself through recognizing that it's a choice, right? So instead of feeling an obligation to do things or feeling stuck in a situation, why are these things happening to me? I think if you can find a way to reframe that for yourself and think about this, to understand that you have chosen to put yourself in this position, you have the opportunity to take on these challenges, that it's been your decision to be here and to face this, then all of those obstacles, for me at least, become much easier to manage, because I've given that control and that agency, that power back to myself to overcome them.
That's such an incredibly powerful lesson, which is, I think what you're saying is, when you're facing that wall, you are also feeling this deep psychological response of fight, flight, freeze, which is you feel a lot of pain and fear. And most of the times it's not going to hurt you. It's just there to give you concern. So, first eliminate that and keep focusing on what you're focusing on. That's incredible. I mean, we're learning so much already, listeners, today. So Now, let me recap some of your early life. You start this company, our founding team connects, that's eventually sold to what is now called Serenova. You start on the company Wordly.com and work on it for a few years. And then you would even work in a large corporation, Oracle, for a few years, where you rapidly rise through the ranks. How does all this culminate in you entering the world of real estate and prop tech?
Yeah. Um, I know it's been it was actually my own personal journey, right, and my family's journey into real estate, into home ownership that led the way for me to get there professionally. So, um, it has been or it was very much a challenge for us for my wife and I to buy a home. We are in Northern California in the Bay Area in a high cost center for everything, but particularly housing. Dual income, no kids, trying for several years to buy a home and consistently losing out to folks that had larger down payments or all cash and that kind of thing. So ultimately, when our daughter was born, we felt like it was for the life that we wanted to experience, the lifestyle I wanted to have as a family. We felt like what home ownership could offer us was important enough to leave. So we moved 1,000 miles away to Washington, outside Seattle, to buy a house. Ultimately, that transaction, that experience was a very bumpy one for us. We sort of transitioned with a real estate agent referral and a lender still locally in the Bay Area. They didn't work well together. I didn't understand the closing process. I spent most of my paternity leave managing a home closing when arguably everyone else that we were paying to manage that transaction should have been doing it. And so that was really one of the recognitions for me that this closing process, the actual transaction of real estate, is one that people aren't making all the time. It's one that people don't understand, and there's a lot of work to be done to optimize that, to create more efficiency in a very old industry that was. Title and escrow still uses a lot of manila folders and post-it notes, and it needn't be that way. So I joined a company, Modus, after they had raised their Series A to build the technology platform for servicing title and escrow. So we were building the software suite that the title and escrow teams and agents were using, as well as interfacing directly with all the customer stakeholders, with real estate agents, with home buyers, with lenders. And that was an incredibly interesting project for me. It's such a challenging experience and a transaction to actually digitize, because I like to say 90% of every transaction is the same. It's just a different 90%. And so try to automate that is a really interesting challenge. We ultimately sold that business to Compass, and that was my introduction to a lot of the brokerage world, a lot of the lending world, with the joint venture that Compass had with Guaranteed Rate, Origin Point, their lending business. And so all of those things really broadened the rest of my view into the entirety of the transaction. So, working now, I had experience with title officers, with escrow, with lenders, with real estate agents, with the brokerage. And ultimately around that time, we also realized that we, as a family, wanted to move back to California, that Seattle wasn't quite the right fit for us. And so when we looked at selling our home, we had bought what effectively was a portion of a home in California. But when we sold it allowed us to experience the appreciation in our home equity to actually move back to California with the down payment we needed. So we sort of executed this transaction that in some ways mirrors what we've created with Crib Equity, where we had a partial down payment for a California home. We put that into a Washington home. We sold it, and then we had what we needed to move back. And so, we ended up traveling and moving 2,000 miles to move almost exactly a mile from the apartment that we were renting when we left. And that was really part of the main origin story for the creating of Crib Equity.
Wow. There are so many stories in here. I want to understand them in more detail. So it seems like you joined Modus post Series A, and for anybody who has gone through a real estate transaction, they can really understand the analogy of literally title and escrow being handled around in manila folders for some of the biggest transactions you'll probably do in your life. And automating that using software is a no-brainer. What were some of the highs and lows of working there, and that eventually led to a sale to Compass?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, part of it also for the customer entitlements, where I think is, and with any business, is expectations, right? When I went through our first transaction, I had no idea what the expectations were, and so being able to build a software tool that guides people through that, because when you do get into a home closing, you have a flurry of activity around the offer, and then everything goes quiet, and then a month later, there's a flurry of activity around the closing, and in the middle, you're left searching for answers about what do I have to do next, because I just had this huge rush to get everything done in the day or two after getting under contract. So there are some really big opportunities to educate people there. I think that the highs was just the massive growth that was happening in that business and in the real estate market at that time. I think what we built and what we were offering to realtors to bring to their clients through Modus was really compelling. We were the first to offer a digital earnest money deposit, so you could sort of bend your earnest money in, which overcame a lot of challenges, particularly as we went into the pandemic and people weren't going into banking offices and weren't going into title offices to deliver checks. And so, I think the team, the culture, and that was built there was second to none, and that was really a high for me. The lows were probably also around a lot of the things that businesses went through during that COVID pandemic era. There were some hard decisions that were made around staffing, around run rate, particularly for startups. So there was an expectation that the market may crater, life as we know it may change because of COVID, and we had to impact some people's lives accordingly, which is never a fun thing to do.
Yeah, completely empathize with that. And so now, the second journey you describe, which is you essentially had to move out of Bay Area to work on that initiative, and then you moved back within a mile of where you were before. But you described a very interesting transaction, which is you already owned a portion of a home in California, and you were able to exit that portion, which effectively made your down payment up, and that was the inspiration behind Crib Equity. So how did that transaction work?
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, it was a little bit different, but because we bought the home in Seattle for probably about three quarters of what we were trying to buy a house in the Bay Area for, probably 2/3 of what we would have needed to actually buy a house in the Bay Area. But you realize that a mortgage, specifically, the mortgages also that we have available here in the U.S. with 30-year fixed rate. It's one of the best financial instruments available to consumers, and so it's the reason why homeownership is the generational wealth vehicle for most families, because this mortgage, which, by the way, if rates go up, I keep my lower rate. If rates go down, I can go get the lower rate. Also gives me leverage in my investment of my home, and this also housing utility. And that is something that the average consumer doesn't have access to somewhere else in their portfolio. You typically have to have a lot more assets before you start getting access to those sort of leveraged investment opportunities. And so, even by investing, a smaller amount, that leveraged growth allowed us to realize a gain that then we could turn around and come back to the Bay Area. So we envision, doing essentially the same thing by allowing someone to put in half of the down payment of the equity in their home, or 3/4 or 2/3, and then to ultimately own, half or 2/3 or 3/4 of the proceeds of the home when they sell it. And that would have put us essentially in the same position, right? If we had been able to put our, 3/4 of a down payment down in California and get the support for the other quarter, we would have done the same thing, but largely not had to leave the state. So, sometimes I say we're the rich parents for the majority of folks that don't have them. That is the solution for other people, is to have families that are able to contribute that amount of money to their down payments.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, I completely agree. And so seems like Crib Equity is really a combination of essentially, generating levered returns from investing in down payments while marrying your philosophy of creating deep positive impacts in the lives of the people you want to work with, and you're doing that by solving the most difficult challenge we are facing nationally, which is the housing affordability crisis. Statistically, I'm not sure everybody's aware, but the home ownership rate in the US has not changed in the last 50 years. 2/3 of people owned a home in 1975, almost 50 years ago, and right now 2/3 people own a home. Right, so 1 in 3 families in the U.S. still are not homeowners, and given the rate at which home prices have increased over the last 4 years, especially, and broadly over the last 2 decades, makes housing deeply unaffordable for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think even maybe more depressing is that when in a surveys of renters today, only 40% of them believe that they'll ever be able to become a homeowner, right? And so I think that the home ownership rate, if we don't do something, is actually not going to stay unchanged. It'll probably decline, right? We're in a market where or in an environment here in the U.S. where housing prices have dramatically outpaced wages. And when we've gotten to a point now where ultimately, the equity, or sorry, the debt financing that we provide and a mortgage to access that is sort of, I like to say, reaching the end of its runway, right? And so even though I think the industry has been very responsive with a lot of great products and mortgage that have helped folks. So first, right in the 70s, we invented mortgage insurance as a product that allowed people to put less than 20% down, and that's served a very valuable role in creating access to home ownership. There's been a lot more done since then to provide for low down payment home purchase options. Now you're seeing 1% down, 0% down. The challenge is that people are asset constrained, which those mortgages recognize, but no one can actually afford to finance 99 or 100% of their home because that payment is just too large relative to their wages. And so that's where we see that there's the more than 3/4 of all mortgage applications that are denied are because of the down payment, a lack of capital reserves that you would hold after purchase, or your debt to income ratio. And so in all three of those scenarios, short of immediately increasing your income, would be to increase the amount of equity in the home and decrease the amount of debt that you're taking out. We see a world where there needs to be alternative options available to consumers to be able to enter into home ownership.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And debt cannot be the hammer used for solving every nail in this problem. Increasing the amount of debt in the housing market did have disastrous effects that culminated in the 2008 the global financial crisis. So equity investment actually reduces the amount of debt in a home, increases the amount of collateralization in a home, and also creates a co-investor with you is highly incentivized to help you keep the home and maintain the home, and eventually generate value from the home. So now this makes perfect sense from a business strategy and standpoint perspective, and it also is very clear how this is such a strong fit with your core personality, your core operating philosophy in life. Can you help our listeners understand this from the customer perspective? So what is the ideal customer journey of working with Crib Equity?
Yeah, so we really see three different customer segments, and I'll sort of try to briefly touch on all three of them. So the first is obviously folks who are not in the housing market. They are not even in the market for a home purchase, either because they can't afford it, or they're earlier in their careers and not yet feeling like they're in a position to own. And so what we can offer them is a tool to qualify for that home purchase, now or sooner. And there's obviously tremendous benefits available to someone who's in that position, right? If you're, because I like to say, if you're not in the housing market today, but you want to be, and you're not in the market because you can't afford to be, well, your finances have to grow at a pace that outpaces the housing market, right? So your down payment has to appreciate faster, or it has to grow faster than your savings, than the market. Your income has to continually increase in order to qualify for more debt as home prices go up. So, if we can get people into the housing market sooner, then ultimately, even on a shared basis with their equity, if you can buy an appreciating asset sooner, it's better for you financially to do so. And so we're looking at a lot of, folks who are maybe on the edges of, debt to income qualification, or who want to have a cash flow for their home purchase that has a different profile, so they want to put more money down. And all of those are reasons to to get into home purchase earlier. If we just took averages of the market for the last several decades, home price appreciation and down payment savings time, if we cut the down payment savings time in half, by when we get to the milestone where someone would have bought on their own, that shared buyer would have over 240% the net worth of the buyer, because they've had that appreciation in the home, but also their mortgage payment would be 32% less, right? And so those are very compelling numbers for someone to enter into housing sooner. The second is frankly someone who just wants more budget, right? And there are those buyers who want a spare bedroom, they want the home office, they want a particular school district or a better commute, and actually being able to push their budget up by taking more down payment helps them to achieve the type of home ownership they want. And sharing in the equity is a valuable trade-off for them in order to achieve that lifestyle. And frankly, probably access to a home that is more desirable and may have a better appreciation over time that they're going to share into. And then the third is just this buyer class, I think, that thinks about home ownership and maybe asset ownership slightly differently. They're looking at it from the perspective of, hey, maybe I do have a 20% down payment, but if I put that into my home, now my home is the only asset that I own. And from a diversification perspective, from an investing standpoint, is that a wise move? Do I want to be house poor? Do I want to really liquidate everything that I own in order to buy a house? And for some folks, the answer is no. And so if you can, maybe hold on to half of that, you feel a greater sense of financial security. Maybe you don't have tax consequences of selling some of those liquid assets in order to get your down payment. You can achieve that through working with crib equity.
So to summarize, from a customer standpoint, you either need help in reducing your mortgage payment or to increase your home purchase budget, or you don't want to put all your savings in your home. You don't want to end up becoming house rich but cash poor. Crib equity is the right solution for you. Is there any way, Skye, that you can help a home buyer listening to this right now, or somebody who's helping a home buyer listening to this right now, understand this with a user persona and some numbers?
Yeah, definitely. So, and I like your synopsis, by the way. I think I could have just said, yeah, we help people afford to buy a home, afford to buy more home, or have flexibility in the way they buy a home. I think that maybe that's a better soundbite. So there are, in terms of someone looking to get into the market, or how we could help a specific consumer. So typically and I think an ideal borrower for us is someone that is not really competing with like an FHA low down payment option. There are other alternative purchase structures. There are lease to own type solutions that people can look at if they value that in the kind of no to low down payment. But for the median home buyer in the U.S. now, they're putting around 13 or 14% down. So really kind of the 8 to 10 upwards is a good fit for us. And what we can do is really bring enough capital to match their down payment, inclusive of the closing cost to actually close on the home. So, for someone, for example, buying maybe $1 million home in California, which is, now sort of typical, if they had $100,000, we would be able to bring $100,000, which, vastly exceeds what, any kind of down payment assistance program, is able to do. And by doing that, they're going to obviously be able to remove the need for things like mortgage insurance off of their loan, but they'll also then be financing only 80% of the home value. So their mortgage will be $800,000 instead of $900,000, because they're not making any payment to crib equity for the investment that we've made in the home. And so, those things combined really create the savings for someone. That's where we lower the debt to income ratio. That's where we lower their monthly payment to allow them to qualify. And, we'll support them through home ownership. But really, for all intents and purposes, they own and manage the homes as they would solely. So the homeowner decides when they want to sell. They decide when they want to, buy out the investor if they do, or if they want to refinance, or all those decisions. People always ask about, what they can do with the home. Nick, if you want to renovate your garage to look like a purple unicorn, you can do that, right? It's your home. You can you sort of manage it in a way that that makes sense for you. And I think that's a big part of homeownership is feeling that sense of ownership. And so, that we're certainly at that price point here in California, you're still talking about taking tax deductions for mortgage interest, for property taxes. All of those rights still persist with our product. So, we're really looking to add as little process and as little change to what a typical transaction is. So that when it comes time to sell, when it comes time to to refinance or repurchase the investor's equity, then we'll share in a proportionately in the net proceeds relative to everyone's investment going in.
Makes sense. Yeah. So just to recap, so let's take Sally. Let's say she has enough income to pay a mortgage, but doesn't have enough savings to buy a home in the first place. Let's say her household income is $200,000, so she can easily afford the mortgage on $1 million home, but she only has $100,000 saved, and she doesn't want to put 10% down and borrow a higher loan amount plus pay mortgage insurance. So she goes to Crib Equity. It's cribequity.com, right? So she goes to cribequity.com. She gets $100,000 more. So now she has 20% down. So now she only has to borrow $800,000 from her lender, not $900,000. So loan amount goes down. Plus, because she's reached the magic number 20, she doesn't have to pay mortgage insurance. So like you mentioned before, mortgage payments go down dramatically, both from reducing the loan amount plus from not paying mortgage insurance. And she owns the rights of residence to the home, not Crib Equity. Like you said, can paint her garage in a purple unicorn color if she wants to. And then she can decide, she has all the time in the world to decide when to sell the home or buy out or refinance. And when she does, Crib will share proportionally in the change of value in her home. Is that the right summary?
Yeah, I mean, and just to be fully explicit, there is an initial 10-year expiration, and so the home, the Sally's in full control of everything up until that point in time. At 10 years, then the average home buyer is, particularly a first-time home buyer, is typically not in their home anymore. It's certainly unlikely to be in their first mortgage still at that point. But there's a ability to enter to another term with the investor, or to seek other aspects of other paths to liquidity for everyone. But that is, there's, unfortunately, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So we can't give Sally $100,000 that might stay in her family for perpetuity.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So, they have 10 years. Most people think that when they're buying their first home, it's going to be their forever home. The truth is, most people actually end up getting out of there. The first home feels like a massive upgrade from the rental property where, but in a few years, it feels like your elbows are hitting the walls wherever you walk. So you will most likely end up selling your first home way before 10 years. But even if you don't, Crib Equity will be there to, offer you options to think about, alternate beyond it.
It's funny, when we bought our first home, I had someone that had kind of a mentor tell me that, he's like, go figure out what kind of rate you can get on an ARM. You should consider an ARM, because back then ARMs were sort of significantly lesser or moderately less than a 30-year fixed. And I was like, yeah, but it's only fixed for like 7 years. He's like, you're overthinking it. You're not gonna be in your house that long. And so, it turns out he was right. We refinanced within 18 months, and then we sold the house, 3.5 years later. So, but at the time we bought it, we thought we would be there forever. Right.
I couldn't agree more. I bought my first home 3 years ago, and I can already feel like the walls are shrinking on me. So I completely empathize. So, it sounds amazing. Sounds actually really good. Are there any risks of working with Crib Equity?
Well, I think from the home buyer and the investor side, we've taken great lengths to create the right structure for those parties, but also one that I think just even without Crib Equity. So, obviously there's always a risk in doing business with a company, particularly earlier stages of companies, right? But we've structured things in a way where, as the marketplace, the agreement persists, the homeowner and the investor are still able to retain their relationship in absence of Crib Equity. So, that's certainly something we want to make sure that we're always doing right by our customers and our partners. And it's important for us to be able to have the systems in place to do that for the long term.
Yeah. And then for a salary listening to this, wondering, this sounds actually really good. They're getting a long-term partner. They don't have to make any monthly payments for 10 years. How does Quebec really make money?
Yeah. So we make money through platform fees that are paid by the investor and the home buyer when they sell the home, right? So again, those are fees that are shared in proportion to their ownership. That's the majority of it. So frankly, we might not get paid for that. For arranging that investment and creating that ownership for 10 years, and that's possible, right? But we realize that folks are using our product because they're either cash constrained upfront, or they want the flexibility of using less cash. So there is a very small origination charge that just covers our costs in the transaction, but we defer everything else to the point in time that the people end their relationship in this shared ownership structure, which I think is adds to the value of sort of post-dating that, right? And I think people are familiar with different power buying options or different solutions to being able to access homeownership that adds some significant cost upfront. And we're able to defer that. We're also able to offset even some of the origination because we are going to have that investor party participating in some of those closing costs.
That makes a lot of sense. What has been your aha moment of scale at Quebequity so far in your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think the aha moment for me was really understanding the critical role that our partners play in this. Certainly on the lending side, home equity investments aren't really new in the context of a product that allows for investment into someone's home for a share of the equity. They are newer and more rare on the purchase side, and a lot of that is because you have to create a product that really works for partners. And if you own your home, if I came to you and said, I want to give you some money for a share of it, that's an agreement between you and me, right? And that's, much more simple than me trying to work with you to buy a home, because now we have to work very closely with your lender, right? And your realtor and your, in some respects, the closing, title and escrow, although they oftentimes work at the behest of the lender anyway. So, it really is about, having a product that works within that ecosystem. And I think when we figured that out and figured out the way to make this work for all the parties involved is really been the lever.
That makes perfect sense. And there was someone looking to, who's really inspired after listening to this, and they're like, this is a company I really want to work with. How would you define the culture at Quebequity?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think we're all here right now because of purpose, right? So everyone on the team has a different story. Whether that's me personally with my difficulty getting into housing, whether it's someone who has done more SFR or multifamily investing that wants to a better way to allocate funds because they want to support homeownership, or whether it's we have some folks on the team that have children that are approaching, the age when they would, be, or they're in college, or they're thinking about how is my kid ever going to be able to afford a home in this market, and this is a product that that should exist. So, I think there's a lot of that passion that is part of the early team, and so we're a close knit group that's really focused on making impact, and that is. I think the thing that we've coalesced around thus far. So, encourage people that that would share that view and want to work on this, on this challenge to reach out to us.
That makes perfect sense. Now, let's say, family office reached out to you, Skye, and say, they just had a liquidity event and they suddenly had a lot of capital freed up. They've already allocated the capital to a bunch of asset classes, but they have $100 million left for real estate. How would you advise them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd advise them to put it to work on our platform. Honestly, the way that we've envisioned, that's an amount of capital that we're able to move for investors. We offer a product that is not accessible really in a lot of other ways, which is diversified and leveraged access to single family real estate as an asset. And so for the investor, I think upwards of 60% of investors will we'll say that the operational overhead, the management, the acquisition cost is the reason why they're not in single family real estate. Single family real estate as an asset class has done incredibly well. It's highly uncorrelated to a lot of other investments, and frankly, it's larger than all U.S. public equities. But it's that difficulty in getting access to it, the cost of doing that, the cost of getting operational, that is a big challenge. And so we're able to overcome that for the investor. And as a family office, they can feel good about the fact that investment is actually going to support people getting into home ownership. So rather than owning a portfolio of homes that would be essentially taken off of the market for home ownership by individuals or families, they're going to be investing alongside of them to make it possible.
Amazing. Skye, that makes a lot of sense. Investors should strongly consider investing in crib equity, given the diversification benefit, the low operating overhead, and the ability to invest in single family homes. But what is the story behind naming the company Crib Equity?
Yeah, funny you should ask. It's actually the name itself can be sort of polarizing in the sense that some people I talk to don't really get it, and some people I talk to just love it and they can't get enough of it, and they're super excited about it. So it's funny to hear different responses, but obviously it comes from sort of a moment in time, maybe that's more reflective of the founders' ages than anything else, with crib being a reference, my crib, my place, MTV cribs, and then equity obviously being representing both the equity that we're investing. And I think it's a very distinct sort of structural delineation with our product as being equity rather than being additional debt, but also equity in the sense of fairness and inclusion and access. And so will Crib Equity be the name forever? I think that's debatable, but for now it has enough fans that we're sticking with it.
I like it. It's it has a lot of similarities to Facebook, like two very well-known words, but that work really well together. And crib obviously explains your first, your relationship with the housing market, and equity obviously is, how you play a role. I love the name. It's a very good name. So Skye, what are the biggest challenges you're personally thinking of in terms of scaling your team or operations to reach your aspirational goals over the next 12 months?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that in the industry that we're in housing, and specifically in mortgage, it's an industry that operates on standardization and on scale. And so while we sort of work to cross that that divide from a product that's able to serve customers, serve our partners, but then ultimately transition to one that really can serve the market, I think that becomes for us one of the big focuses is how do we take this from that a solution that plays a part in the market to being a solution in the market, and obviously we have to scale operationally enough to become an entrenched part of the mortgage market.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as you take a step back and think about the future of the home buying industry, what's your ultimate vision for the future of the home buying industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think consumers need choices, right? And we've there are many mortgage products available. There's for different use cases, right? I mean, we already talked about sort of ARM versus fixed rate. Obviously, there are different terms that you can get into with different rate and payment associated with them. There are also a lot of unique products that are structured around, are you a full docs or W-2, or are you looking for bank statement loans? Are you self-employed? Are you getting a mortgage because of, that's backed by your assets rather than your income? Are you an investor? Are you looking at getting a mortgage that's backed by the income generated by your property? There's a lot of different solutions out there. And I think, that sometimes that can become complex, but it also speaks to the need to serve a bunch of different use cases in such a massive market. So, my hope is that we can introduce another solution specifically for folks that are trying to have more flexibility or have more affordability in getting into the housing market, and doing that through the combination of debt and equity together. But will there be other solutions? Are there other solutions for people to do this? There are. And I think the consumer is going to figure out what makes most sense for them. Are they optimizing for, taking on more leverage and more risk? Are they looking to, increase their cash flow and the stability of their home? There's different ways to achieve that.
Yeah, agree. Skye, I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Okay, shoot.
What What do you know about the real estate industry that might surprise most listeners?
All right. The one that surprised me as I got into reading about mortgages was the fact that the mortgage holder of our home has the right to come enter our home. And so somewhere deep tied into your mortgage is typically a clause that would allow the mortgage holder to come inspect your home and into your room.
Wow. Yeah. That's part. If you're coming, let me know so we can prepare some tea for you.
Exactly. I don't know how often that actually happens. I assume it doesn't. Otherwise, people would think about it. But there is a clause in there.
There's a clause in there. Wow. Yeah, that surprises me as well. Skye, what's some of the best financial advice you've received?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I'd say, I tend to bet on myself. So I think that the financial advice would be to, invest in things that you know and that you understand.
Yeah. What organization or institution would you fix if you had the time to fix it?
I wouldn't flag a specific institution or organization, but I think that from a regulatory perspective right now in housing, the way everything is structured is that debt is really the only recognized instrument to help folks buy a home. And I think there's, we're blazing a trail here to show that there are other solutions. And I hope and expect that as we can do that, and, that there'll be a recognition of alternative structure.
Yeah, agreed. Final question, Skye. If your loved ones agree to be mentored by you, what's the number one skill that you would teach them?
Well, at this age, I don't know that my kids even have the choice to agree. They're just getting it. But I think the thing that's been most impactful on my success has just been, for to use an overused word is grit, right? To have the determination to go after what you want, to not be deterred by short-term obstacles. And if you really want it, you keep working for it, and get there.
Grit and determination. That was Skye Laudari. He's a goldfish with extremely strong, short memory to bounce back from events, but also a bee who cooperates and works really hard to create value for the greater good. If you're a homeowner who has enough income to afford mortgage but doesn't have enough savings to buy the home in the first place, and you want help with your down payment, check out cribequity.com, where you can reduce your mortgage payment, eliminate mortgage insurance, or increase a budget to buy a home, or diversify your assets so you don't become house rich and cash poor. If you're an investor looking to invest in hundreds of thousands of single family homes without having operating overhead, reach out to Skye Laudari. I'll add his details in the bio. This is Nick Shah. If you ever want to talk about real estate, shoot me a note on CEO@home.llc. Thanks, everyone.